My name is David, and I'm about to tell you a story that will chill you to your very core. A tale of horror and survival that unfolded on what should have been an ordinary night in Dallas. I'm 40 years old now, but the events of that fateful evening are seared into my memory, as fresh and terrifying as if they happened yesterday. It was a crisp autumn night, the kind where the air feels alive with possibility, or in my case, with unspeakable dread. I had been working late at my office in downtown Dallas. The glittering skyline, a familiar comfort as I made my way to the parking garage. Little did I know that comfort was about to be shattered in the most horrifying way imaginable. As I approached my car, keys in hand, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a low, guttural growl, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. My hand froze midway to the car door handle, and I slowly turned around, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. There, in the shadows between two parked cars, I saw a pair of glowing yellow eyes. They were fixed on me with an intensity that paralyzed me with fear. I blinked, hoping it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But when my eyes opened, the creature had moved closer. It emerged from the darkness, and I felt my sanity begin to unravel. Before me stood a beast that defied logic, a monstrous fusion of man and wolf. It stood on two legs, towering over me at nearly 8 feet tall. Coarse, matted fur covered its muscular body, and its hands ended in razor-sharp claws that gleamed in the dim garage lighting. But it was the face that truly horrified me. A elongated snout filled with dagger-like teeth pulled back in a snarl that promised unimaginable pain. Those yellow eyes, now fully visible, held an intelligence that was unmistakably human, yet twisted by a primal, animalistic hunger. I didn't think. I couldn't think. Pure instinct took over, and I ran. I ran faster than I ever had in my life, abandoning my car and sprinting towards the garage exit. The sound of claws scraping against concrete echoed behind me, spurring me on with the terrifying knowledge that this nightmare was in pursuit. I burst out onto the street, the cool night air hitting my face as I gasped for breath. The streets were eerily empty, the usual bustle of downtown Dallas replaced by an oppressive silence. I darted down the sidewalk, my dress shoes slapping against the pavement in a frantic rhythm. A howl pierced the night, so close it made my ears ring. I risked a glance over my shoulder and immediately wished I hadn't. The werewolf, for what else could I call this monstrosity, was gaining on me, moving with a speed that defied its bulk. Its powerful legs ate up the distance between us with each bound. I veered into an alley, hoping to lose it in the maze of back streets. The darkness closed in around me, broken only by the occasional flicker of a failing streetlight. My lungs burned and my legs felt like lead, but the sound of snapping jaws behind me kept me moving. Suddenly, I found myself in a dead end. Brick walls rose up on 3 sides, mocking my desperate bid for escape. I spun around, pressing my back against the cold stone, as the werewolf slowly entered the alley. It moved with the confidence of a predator that knew its prey was trapped. In that moment, staring into the face of certain death, my life didn't flash before my eyes. Instead, my mind raced with questions. How was this possible? Werewolves were supposed to be myths, stories told around campfires to scare children. Yet here I was, faced with a reality that shattered everything I thought I knew about the world. The creature stalked closer, its breath coming in steaming pants in the cool air. I could smell its rank odor, a mixture of wet dog and something far more foul. My eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use as a weapon, but there was nothing but trash and broken bottles. As it lunged forward, I ducked and rolled, feeling the rush of air as its claws barely missed my head. I scrambled to my feet, my hand closing around a jagged piece of metal, part of an old fire escape that had fallen to the ground. It wasn't much, but it was all I had. I swung wildly as the werewolf came at me again. By some miracle, the makeshift weapon connected with its snout. The beast reeled back, more in surprise than pain, but it was enough. I bolted past it, back towards the alley entrance. The streets were a blur as I ran, the sound of pursuit never far behind. I had no plan, no destination in mind. My only thought was to keep moving, to somehow survive this nightmare. I found myself in the arts district, the modern architecture of the opera house looming before me. Without thinking, I rushed towards it, hoping to find an open door, a hiding place, anything to put between me and the monster at my heels. To my amazement, a side door was propped open, likely left that way by a careless stagehand. I slipped inside, pulling the door shut behind me. The sudden silence was deafening. I stood in the darkness, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. For a moment, I dared to hope that I had lost it. That hope was shattered by the sound of claws scraping against metal. The door bulged inward as something massive slammed against it. I backed away, fumbling in the dark, my hand brushing against what felt like stage props and set pieces. The door flew off its hinges with a deafening crash. Moonlight spilled into the room, silhouetting the massive form of the werewolf. Its yellow eyes found me instantly, and a growl that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building rumbled from its chest. I turned and ran deeper into the building, my footsteps echoing off the high ceilings. I found myself on the main stage, the rows of empty seats stretching out before me like a sea of shadows. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, center stage in the performance of my life, with an audience of one bloodthirsty monster. The werewolf burst onto the stage, its claws leaving deep gouges in the polished wood. I backed away, my impromptu weapon held out in front of me like a talisman. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. To my utter astonishment, the creature paused, its head tilted to one side almost quizzically, as if my words had stirred something within its savage mind. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of humanity in those bestial eyes. That moment passed all too quickly. With a roar that shook dust from the rafters, it charged. I dove to the side, rolling across the stage as claws raked the air where I had been standing. I scrambled to my feet, looking for an escape route. My eyes fell on the orchestra pit. Without thinking, I leapt, plummeting into the darkness below. I landed hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Pain shot through my ankle. I had twisted it in the fall. Above me, the werewolf prowled the edge of the stage, its growls a constant reminder of the death that awaited me. I crawled beneath the conductor's podium, trying to make myself as small as possible. The sound of splintering wood filled the air as the creature jumped down into the pit. I held my breath, pressing myself against the back wall, praying to whatever god might be listening that it wouldn't find me. Heavy footsteps approached my hiding place. I could see its feet, a grotesque mixture of human and wolf, just inches away. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure it would give me away. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the night. Sirens. Someone must have heard the commotion and called the police. The werewolf's head snapped up, its ears twitching at the approaching noise. With a final, frustrated growl, it bounded out of the orchestra pit. I heard its claws clicking against the floor as it ran, growing fainter until they disappeared altogether. I remained frozen in place, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. It wasn't until I heard voices, human voices, calling out that I finally allowed myself to believe I had survived. The aftermath was a blur of police statements and medical examinations. No one believed my story, of course. They chalked it up to some drug-crazed attacker or a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. The claw marks on the stage and the door were harder to explain. But even then, they looked for any explanation other than the impossible truth. But I know what I saw that night. I know the terror I felt, the primal fear that comes from being hunted by a predator that shouldn't exist. And I know that somewhere out there, in the shadows of the city I once called home, a monster lurks. I've since moved away from Dallas, unable to shake the feeling that every dark alley, every shadowy corner, might hide those glowing yellow eyes. But I share my story as a warning. The world is darker and more dangerous than we know. And when the moon is full and the night is deep, beware the Werewolf of Dallas. For those who doubt my tale, I say this: pray you never have reason to believe me. Pray you never find yourself alone on a dark night with the sound of inhuman growls echoing in your ears. Pray you never have to look into the eyes of a nightmare made flesh. Because once you've seen the Werewolf of Dallas, you'll never be the same again. The knowledge that such creatures exist will haunt you, change you. Every shadow will hold potential danger. Every unexpected sound will send your heart racing. I've spent years trying to understand what happened that night. I've researched folklore, consulted with cryptozoologists, even reached out to self-proclaimed psychics. But answers are hard to come by when you're dealing with the impossible. Some nights I wake up in a cold sweat, the memory of hot breath on the back of my neck feeling all too real. I've installed security systems, bought guard dogs, even taken up martial arts. Anything to feel a little safer. But deep down, I know that if the werewolf ever decided to come for me again, none of these precautions would make a difference. I've become something of a recluse, working from home and venturing out only when necessary. My relationships have suffered. It's hard to connect with people when you're carrying a secret like this. How do you explain to a date that you flinch at every dog bark, that the sight of the full moon fills you with uncontrollable dread? There are support groups for trauma survivors, but none for those who've encountered creatures that shouldn't exist. I've thought about starting one, but the fear of attracting attention, of somehow drawing the werewolf back to me, always holds me back. Sometimes in my darkest moments, I wonder if it wouldn't have been better to have died that night. At least then, I wouldn't have to live with this constant fear, this knowledge that has set me apart from the rest of humanity. But then I remember the flicker of humanity I saw in the werewolf's eyes that night on the stage. It haunts me almost as much as the terror does. Was there a person trapped inside that monstrous form? Someone cursed, struggling against their own nature? Or was it just a trick of the light, my mind desperately searching for something familiar in the face of the unknown? I've become obsessed with lunar cycles, marking each full moon on my calendar with a sense of dread. I scan the news for reports of animal attacks, unexplained disappearances, anything that might indicate the werewolf is still out there. So far, there's been nothing conclusive, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. To those who read this and dismiss it as the ravings of a madman, I envy you. I envy your ability to walk in the world without knowing what lurks in its shadows. But to those who sense the ring of truth in my words, those who have perhaps glimpsed things that defy explanation, you are not alone. The Werewolf of Dallas opened my eyes to a world beyond our understanding. A world where the line between myth and reality blurs, where the monsters from our nightmares breathe and hunt and kill. It's a terrifying knowledge to carry, but carry it I must. So I leave you with this final warning. Be vigilant, trust your instincts, and if you ever find yourself in Dallas on a moonlit night, and you hear a howl that makes your blood run cold, run. Run, and don't look back. For the Werewolf of Dallas is real, and it's always hungry for its next victim. As for me, I'll continue to watch and wait, forever marked by my encounter with the beast. The werewolf took more than just my sense of safety that night. It took my innocence, my belief in a rational, explainable world. In return, it gave me a glimpse behind the curtain of reality, a peek into the true nature of our universe. It's a knowledge I never asked for, a burden I wouldn't wish on anyone. But it's mine to bear, and bear it I will. For as long as the Werewolf of Dallas roams the night, someone needs to remember to warn, to stand guard against the darkness. And so I end my tale not with a triumphant declaration of victory, but with a solemn promise. I will not let the terror of that night define me. I will find a way to use this knowledge to protect others from the fate I narrowly escaped. The Werewolf of Dallas may still be out there, but it no longer holds power over me. I am David, survivor of the impossible, witness to the unknown, and my story, like the howl of the werewolf, will echo through the night, a testament to the horrors that lurk in the shadows of our world.